Right, so as per discussed, we're going to have a look at this game between the two legends, Botvinnik and Alekhine. I think they played this game in the World Championship match. And as you can see, the opening looks very strange, but this Karakan Panov has this tendency of occurring from a large variety of different openings. So now if you look at the board, this position is identical to the one that we get out from the Karakan via a totally different move order, which is what we do and which is why we are analyzing this game in the first place. So you see now that I am exactly at the same position from a totally different opening.
Yep.
Which is pretty cool. So this is how we got to our opening position. Did you have a chance, by the way, to play this in the last week?
I had one game that started off, but they didn't play e6. They played knight to c6.
Yes, that's the other main variation, so I'm going to cover that one for you too. So, after castles and rook e1, mostly we spent our time last week on the move a6, and then I uploaded a couple of games of my own where my opponent kept on playing this knight f6 move, which you told me about, that you watched that lesson on YouTube. So I covered already a couple of angles. Now, a very common mistake in this position is to play b6. The idea is obviously to develop the bishop to b7 where it stands really well, but the reason why it is not actually a good move, because it ignores the fact that there is already a certain amount of pressure built up on the d5 square, and with the help of the rook that is targeting down on the e file after b6, we can transpose into a different structure, a symmetrical pawn structure, one that we also need to know really well if we are playing the Panov, because sometimes they pop up here. In such a way can we enter this pawn structure that it's actually very advantageous to us, because in this structure black really would want to have this pawn back here to cover the c6 knight, and the bishop by no means should come out this way. It would like to be ideally here, or potentially even pinning the knight, but definitely not here where it's blocked in by its own pawn. Okay, so although technically we do lose a tempo in this particular move, but we gain it back immediately by bishop b5. And the whole idea is to put an enormous amount of pressure on the c6 knight, because if we manage to force it to move away, that grants us free access to the weakened e5 square. Alright, so let's see how the game developed. Bishop d7. Bishop b7 would have been equally bad on account of queen a4. And it's already very awkward to deal with the pressure on the knight. But bishop d7 was met by the same move. And here Alekhine tried to come up with a clever positional concept, which is still a remarkably ugly move. And he played knight b8. So what you need to know about the structure is that obviously we have got a pawn blocked on black, they have got a pawn blocked on white. So consequently, black's bad bishop is the one on d7, and our bad bishop is the one on c1, because they are the ones that are on the same color as the pawn that is blocked. Oops, I should make it green. So black's aim is to try to swap off these dudes. White's aim is to swap off these dudes.
Yep.
Okay, so that is the positional justification behind knight b8. However, there are certain circumstances and cases where white can build up such a development lead that actually the fact that these bishops come off from the board are not going to play the major role in the game. The main roles will be played by the better developed pieces and the fact that the white army is far more coordinated. So here white is more than happy to allow that swap to take place, given that now we have completed development. The rook is already targeting down that way, and black's furthest developed piece is a bishop on the 7th rank. So that is definitely a major failure. Plus, now it's very hard to get this knight back into the game. Okay, knight d7 is obviously not working because the pawn is hanging on d5, and these two squares are already taken away by the queen. Now, before we get into that, I wanted to show you one more thing. If in this position they play rook c8, then first and foremost we can grab the pawn here. Can you see why rook a8 is not trapping the queen?
Yeah, because the e7 bishop.
Very good. So we have got this attack here, and so consequently we can do that. But even the calm bishop f4 would do the trick here too, simply because black is now really struggling for air to put his pieces somewhere, and we have got still a very logical follow-up to come here and just keep on building up this pressure. And it's actually a funny case when these two pieces on the diagonal actually create a pin against the bishop. Like, I really would like to neutralize this by jumping the knight here, sort of easing the tension down there as well as on the pin, but I can't because it's hanging.
Yep.
And now also I have motives like this to trap the rook back down there as an added measure. Alright, so knight b8, bishop f4, take, a6. The queen dropped back to a4. Now with b5 we simply come back to c2. And on knight f6 we have got a variety of ways to continue the game, but there is one in particular that stands out that I believe wins by force. Can you find it for me, please? It is actually tactics, purely.
Yeah, okay. So how about... I was looking at bishop c7.
Yeah?
Queen
Continue,
e8.
please.
Yeah, queen e8 and
Yep.
then bishop to d6.
Brilliant job. Bishop c7. The queen can't go that way because the bishop is hanging.
Yep.
And if the queen goes here, then bishop d6 and the pin can't be broken, the bishop can't be guarded, and therefore white wins. Okay, very good stuff. One question, just you needed to check two more things to make sure that your calculation was spotless. On rook c8, we win by take and take.
Yep.
Whereas on queen c8, rook takes, rook a7, what's gonna be our winning move? Yeah, don't necessarily need to look for fabulous finish offs. Just defend the bishop and you win.
Okay. Rook c1.
That's it. But you needed to make sure that you saw those things too. So that's it. That's how this variation works. So instead of playing b5 here, black decided to swap more pieces off, which is again traditionally what you would want to do. When you are in trouble, you try to swap pieces to ease the pain and to stir the position towards the so desired draw. However, here again, the problem is that black keeps on swapping off the pieces that are reasonably active. So whenever you are swapping pieces off, what you need to consider is, well, you need to consider what goes off the board, because that's obviously a very important aspect of the position. But what is even more important is what stays on the board. And now what we see is a totally undeveloped army versus a fully developed one. So technically, you know, black has made a great deal of effort and you know, achievement by swapping of so many pieces, but in reality everything else that is left on the board is actually doomed. And with rook c1, not only did white prevent knight c6, but also made it possible to penetrate via queen c6 or rook c6 should they play knight d7. And that is a borderline disaster, is that, like, if you look at this, it's not looking pretty. Poor guy. Now the knight won't be able to move at all because this is hanging. If the queen moves away somewhere, we can start applying pressure on d5. And again, I'm completely tied down. Like, if the knight tries to defend the d5 pawn, I can take this. And again, it's beautiful to see how harmoniously the white pieces cooperate while black is trying to dodge all these punches raining upon him. Okay, rook a7. Obviously, again, the intention is another swap and to activate the rook without having to move the knight. But once again, it's a super awkward scenario. Queen c2, denying rook c7. The queen has done its duty on a4. From c2, you can still penetrate via c6 if need be. So this is perfectly fine. Rook e7, takes, and queen c7. So the end of the story is that black achieved what he wanted so badly, to swap off as much as possible, but the problem is that now he has got an utterly useless knight. I mean, this is such a beautiful example of a pure strategical game, where basically your whole entire game plan from literally this point on is based on the fact that this knight is out of the game. And if you look at how consistently Botvinnik pursued this idea of keeping the knight at bay, now by threatening with the penetration and maintaining that concept all the way through, again, here technically knight d7 is doable, but after something like queen b7, I have got 75 threats that black can't possibly handle. And so this very logical and consistent play ended up in this position where the knight still can't possibly move, and now these pawns will be prey of the very active rook and knight. Okay, f6, a very logical move. Once again, the idea is to swap yet another piece, and also we are denying the knight to get in here and there, but it's just a little bit too late. King f1. Endgames are all about patience. There is no hurry to try to munch these pawns. Simple.
Rook b7.
Rook what?
Rook b7.
Yeah, I would just come here.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the time being, black holds. So all you need to do is just to maintain all the trump cards you have and bring more guys to the party. King f1, rook f7, rook c8 check, rook back. Annoying, because now we can't maintain that very annoying rook in the midst of their position, but that's okay. We come back. They can't really improve on their position. So now what we are going to do as a follow-up plan is that we are going to centralize the king, and we are also going to put this knight somewhere else. Where do you think it should go? I've got two squares that I would really like for that knight. Remember, Dominic, that you have got all the time in the world, or close to that. So if it takes 4 moves, so be it. It's an end game. So this is the time to strategize, to find places, to find the correct squares for your pieces, and just get there.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't care if it takes 4 moves. You are controlling the only important open file. This knight can't really move anywhere because then the pawns will become chronically weak. So take your time. Where do you want to go? It is actually a good way when you're thinking about relocating knights in such positions, first to find out where you want it and then think about how to get there, rather than trying to move the knight in your head and figuring out, oh, that would be a good square. Move it backwards.
A couple of ideas.
Yep.
So, I like having my knight on either e3, putting pressure on the d5 pawn.
Yep, very good.
Or possibly even, no, maybe not so much f4 because that's not a safe square for the knight. So
actually, I do like f4 more than e3, although I agree with what you're saying that it's potentially a square that they can target. But I like f4 more simply because it's more active, and also because from here you are targeting the pawn and a weakened square in your enemy's camp. Okay. Now that said, I agree with all you said, and I would probably eventually, even if I aim to get there and then they knock me out, I would then come back here. But the idea is definitely that you want the knight to attack this weak pawn. And that's exactly what I did here. Now g5 obviously immediately took away our hopes of putting the knight here. So now we go plan B and we go to e3. Okay, well, dang it. I really should have asked you to find this move. Okay, after h5.
Yeah.
This is a stunningly beautiful example of a very good positional concept. And as a result, by the way, I disagree with h5. I would have played something rather like king, actually not to f7 because then check is annoying. Maybe just king g7, trying to come out here. Or at least to g6. Yeah, Yeah, even that one is gonna be tricky. It's hard to suggest anything for black really because he's so tied down, but the problem with h5 is that now it's incredibly difficult to meet h4 because the concept is that if I take, I break up this pawn structure and I expose my pawns really badly. The rook swings across, eats this, and then now we are facing two weaknesses instead of just one. Normally the general principle of endgames, by the way, is that this is what we call the two weakness concept or phenomenon, or call it whatever you like. If there is an materially even position in an endgame and there is one weakness that you can target, normally that's not enough to win a game. So what you aim to do when you have got one weakness in your enemy's camp, which in this case the d5 pawn, is that you try to get another one, because then it will be far more complex and difficult for them to cover both weaknesses. And this is exactly what h4 is intending to do. He's trying to either force you to take or push in. Why do you think that pushing in would benefit us?
Because now the f6 pawn is backward.
That is correct, but we can't really exploit that, can we?
Not right now. Actually, before you even played g4, I was just thinking, to me it didn't look too bad.
Okay, this is actually really bad and they didn't even play it.
Yeah.
But remember, Dominic, where we wanted to go before?
Yep.
With the knight and why and the
so yeah, I see now. Further weaknesses in the black camp, such as the f5 square.
That is one.
Yeah.
But once again.
Sorry, also f4. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. So now you see that this is the weakness.
And his king's too slow to get there, isn't it?
Well, the thing is that technically not. I can cover it with the king. So let's say knight d3, king g7, knight f4, king h6. But then again, remember that the king had a duty here, which was to allow the rook to shift between these two squares to dodge my rook. So now I re-penetrate. And please now completely disregard the fact that the pawn is hanging. I do see it. It's just that I want to point out to you that this is the main concept with the two weaknesses, is that now I can't already fulfill the duty of covering those squares to dodge white's rook's penetration via c7. So now you just come in and now you start hitting the weak pawns whichever way you can, and I can't use my rook to chase you away. So for this reason, Alekhine decided not to push this at all and played knight d7. Okay. Now the rook went back immediately. It's very important to be very active before they actually consolidate their position. Yep. And the knight went back to f3, a brilliant move that forces black to make something happen with this pawn structure one way or another. I can't possibly maintain it. What's wrong with rook g7 here?
The rook's not actually protecting the pawn because the knight will fall.
Correct. So this is an ultimate case of overloaded pieces. Takes, and we just take here. And if the rook takes, then we take this. And the more pawns are going to fall now because of the weakness of the queenside pawns. This is how positional and tactical chess always interlinks. Like we are up to move 30. 15 beautiful positional moves in a row. But if you are not tactically alert, then you will miss here the winning strike. That is why I always am a big advocate of teaching my students both sides of chess, the positional and the tactical, because there is no such thing really as a positional or a tactical player. You need to be both in order to be successful. Alright, so now the three brilliant chess, forcing g4, and of course we go back. It might look to many like white is wasting time and black is making progress, but that's not the case. Black is making further weaknesses. These pawns can't move back anymore, and now this is a lethal threat. And the only way for black to meet that is to push his pawn all the way up. But as you can see, now again, there are lots of weakened squares behind these pawns. Now e5 is obviously the one that stands out the most, because remember that this pawn used to be back there. So now we have got access to this square too. A knight here will be a mighty power. Okay. Now given that our knight is already sitting here targeting a pawn, we can call this pawn, well, at least a target If you want to call it a weakness, you want to fix it. For which reason they played f3. So now the pawn is not going anywhere, which means that the rook is tied down to its defense. Okay, and by doing this, white also achieves a very important point, which is that you don't want to use your more powerful pieces, queens, rooks, to guard pawns. You want to leave the duty to other pawns or minor pieces if possible, because obviously you want to use the immense power of a very strong piece in the attack rather than just guarding a silly pawn. But now there is nothing to be done about that. Okay, so being very short of moves, Alekhine just keeps on pushing pawns. Please note that it's a nearly zugzwang position already. The knight can never move because swap and then the pawn is gone. The rook can't move because if I move this way, the knight drops. If I move sideways, the pawn drops. So what's to be done? Okay, fixing another weakness.
Yep.
Targeting the weakness. What do you think our next move? What is our threat? Or I should rather say threats. Where is the rook gonna go after this?
Could go to perhaps d6 to target the d5.
Very good. Which would be lethal immediately, or
maybe even h6.
Very good. So see how pawns that didn't seem to be weak beforehand are now always subjects of our attacks, and it's very difficult to deal with them.
Yep.
Okay, so king e7, denying that. King f2, once again, no hurry principle. Okay, very important, because you can always swing across to the other side. The rook swap still can't happen because that is hanging, and the knight still can't go because that is hanging. Okay, rook up, pawn up. Once again, very patient play, covering up everything. No hurry. King e2. And eventually now we swing across. What's the threat?
Maybe just playing rook g5.
Brilliant. Of course, rook g5. You want to neutralize this good defender. And after the swap, the pawn drops, and that pawn drops too. Plus, you will have connected pass pawns here and here. Once you take the f4 pawn and then push it up, which is brilliant. So, yeah. Again, I reckon in this position, this would have already been decisive. But he decided to be really cruel and play knight e5. The idea with this move is that, again, the black knight is utterly useless. I can't get out on either way. And yeah, knight e7 loses to rook g7. So it's very difficult to find moves for black again. So the knight had to go that way, allowing check. And now the king can move forward. What's the winning move for white here?
Rook d7.
Did you say rook d7?
Yeah.
If here?
Maybe it's...
Let's go again.
Okay.
Or the rook d7 wouldn't ruin it, but it's unnecessary. You can win a pawn by force.
Okay. How about rook b7?
Of course. Of course, rook b7, and that drops. And once we take that, almost inevitably that one will drop too. Good. So, they went back to c8, knight c6. This is really, really high quality sadism that Botvinnik is doing here. Now knight e7 check is threatened, and it's actually a lot harder to stop than you would think. Because this rook is really badly out of squares here. I can only go to here and here, and none of them look particularly happy, given that the check then wins the pawn.
Yep.
The king is totally stuck, I can't go anywhere, so yeah, there was not much to be done here. Check. Finally we pinched one pawn. The next one is hanging, that one is hanging too. Rook d6, g5. Loving these moves when we are defending and attacking at the same time. Please note how utterly useless the knight is again on a6. I can't really activate this piece at any moment because it would be swapped off on both squares, followed by further material loss. Very, very amazing play by White. I would like to emphasize this to you, that the main feature of White's play was to kill every chance of counterplay that Black could have done. And that is just very, very instructive. Rook takes. Please note that the seemingly more tempting king d3 is met by rook e6 when there is a slim chance of stirring up some trouble. So instead takes, and if takes here, I suppose rook across followed by the march of the pawn would eventually mean that Black would have to go back with the rook, which would lose 2 pawns. Rook c6, a very clever concept. Instead of pinching this pawn, he's trying to generate counterplay by creating a pass pawn. In rook endings, the best way to create counterplay is to have a pass pawn of your own. Okay, regardless of what the material balance is, you want to have a pass pawn of your own that's going to grant you some sort of counterplay. And as you can see, Botvinnik wants to have none of that, so he's now pinching this. Rook back, takes king here, and now the plan is simply to come here with the king and eventually take that pawn. And Alekhine said, "Thank you very much." That was humiliation at its best. This is how one would never ever want to lose a game, because what happened here was basically that from this point on, Black never ever had a chance.
Yeah.
Like, it was just sitting there waiting to be slaughtered. And that's exactly what happened. And if I really want to be strict or harsh, I would say that that was the case all the way from here on. Okay, so it was positional domination at its finest. Very purposeful play with the pure concept of simply, you know, having better pieces than your opponent and not allowing them to come back to this game any way or shape or form. A truly fantastic display of positional play by Botvinnik in this game, and a lot to learn about endgames and endgame technique in general. So that was really, really good stuff by Botvinnik, and very patient. Like, I really liked the way how he played. For example, he king f2, although technically he already could have gone for the pawns, and he just kept on building it up. Little moves like this. Karpov's play is exceptional at playing little moves like this that seem to be totally meaningless to many players, but in fact these little extras add up to so much in the end, and it teaches you that very important principle of patience in endgame. That when your opponent is rendered to hopelessness and they don't have any counterplay, you don't need to rush it. You just build it up as best as you can, and those pawns will drop on their own accord. Like, even here, he's not even going into that rook g5 business, although I'm 100% certain it would win. He instead just chooses to dominate this knight 100%. Like, after rook g5 takes knight c6, there is still stuff to calculate because we drop this, then the knight comes back, covers his pawn. I think it's winning, but why to risk that when you can simply dominate that knight in such a beautiful manner that he just can't possibly do a thing? And this is not running away. You can do that anytime you please. It is just a beautiful display of endgame technique and positional play. And eventually, funnily enough, it was actually the rook that got dominated to the level where it cost Black material because of this check. And once these pawns start dropping, they don't stop dropping. And the rest was trivial. So that's a very important lesson to us about positional chess, but also about the opening. So remember that if in this position, after rook e1, they play b6, it's almost an auto loss after this pile up on the c6 knight. The position simply can't take this much pounding when they should be super busy with developing really quickly their pieces. Alright, so that was the amazing Botvinnik-Alekhine game, and now I'm going to try to move on to the amazing Domenic and his games. If Leeches decides to obey, which doesn't seem to be a... God. Sorry.
I can send you the link.
No, it's okay. I have got you among my favorites already. It's just that for some reason my browser doesn't allow me to open two Leeches windows. Okay. I'm going to go basically in chronological order backwards. Okay, so knight c6 is the other main theoretical line. Knight f3 and bishop g5 are the two main moves here. I'm going to probably show you bishop g5 because the endgame line in knight f3 is super duper drawish. Can you give me a second, please? Honey,
yep.
Can you please go to your room? Yes, you can. Here you go. And can you please turn off the fan and go to mommy? Thank you. Okay, I sorted out the fan. Off you go. Sorry. Oops. Alright, so knight f3, g6. Bishop g4 is the main theoretical move here. G6 is interesting. Takes, and bishop c4 appears to me to be the best and most logical here.
Yeah, and I looked it up afterwards, and indeed that's the normal continuation.
Because you would be very happy to see e6 happening, because e6 and g6 together, they don't mesh too well, because they create a lot of weak dark squares. So you can do stuff like bishop g5 and bishop e7 come down here, denying castling entirely.
Yep.
h3, you know that I'm not fond of moves like this.
I know you don't like it, but I was actually thinking that I really wanted to play bishop e3, queen d2, and neutralize his black bishop that would be on g7. So I couldn't see another way of getting that plan without playing h3.
The problem is that the whole plan is unsound because you are developing the wrong side of the board. You need to get this bishop somewhere and castle. Because let's just play out a scenario where you do get to execute whatever you are doing, and I'm playing along a little bit as black to make this happen. So you play bishop h6. Okay, I take you. I'm not even sure if I would take that. Potentially knight b4 is already rather disturbing. Okay, I will play this because that's the thematic move here. Actually, I would like to stop here for starters. Yep. If you look at the position, black has completed development fully. Totally harmoniously, and is castled.
Yeah.
You're nowhere near finished with your development. Your bishop is still at home. You are uncastled. Consequently, your king is not safe. What normally happens in such cases is that you get destroyed in the center. Hence, knight e4.
Yep.
And yeah, we are already looking very grim. Takes. You have to insert this. King takes. And after knight moves anyway, you lost the d4 pawn in the game.
I wasn't obviously thinking of like playing queen d2 before developing my bishop, but I also thought that maybe restricting his bishop to g4 might be a good idea.
It wouldn't be a bad concept, but the thing is that you don't have time for it. So you need to actually actively and proactively do something about bishop g4, such as takes and bishop g4, bishop c4, that basically distracts black from executing the bishop g4 move. I would like to draw your attention to the fact that the main move is bishop g4 here.
Yep.
So rather than trying to stop it, you just live with it, and it goes with knight takes pawn takes knight takes queen b3.
Yep.
Trying to exploit the fact that the bishop has left the camp, putting pressure here. This is a big theoretical line, but yes, in general, I do not like moves like this, as you know, despite of the fact that I do know why you played it. Okay, so this seems to be a lot more reasonable than the queen d2 bishop h6 plans. Okay, what you're doing here is quite reasonable. Okay, remember what I told you about isolated pawn structures as far as swaps are concerned? Okay, maybe it needs to be reinforced. When you have got an isolated pawn, do not swap pieces.
Okay.
Every single swap you make takes you closer to an endgame where you will have a weak, undefendable, isolated pawn. The power of the isolated pawn lies in the middle game, where this pawn grants you more space and potential to attack.
Okay.
If they were to take here, you can't really stop that. But what that does is that it gives support to your pawn on d4, so you don't really mind that swap that much.
Okay.
Okay, so what you could have and should have done in this position is to actually move out of this. Although even this one is not that bad because that opens up the f file, and now this pawn covers the d4 pawn. So in whatever way or order, in the next two moves I would have played bishop here and knight here. Okay, probably starting with knight e5 because I don't mind this change in the position at all, because now the pawn is covering here, and the pressure that we are building up against f7 is becoming more and more realistic.
Okay, I didn't look at knight e5. I was looking at bishop g5 and I thought h6, and then I didn't know what to do.
Just drop back.
Okay.
Very often when you do see something in these isolated pawn structures like this knight come around to block the d5 square, the downside of that is that this knight is responsible for guarding that. So yes, this knight becomes now far more stronger on d5 than it was on c6, but now your knight becomes a lot stronger too by coming onto e5.
Okay.
This is what I would play here without much hesitation.
Okay.
I don't necessarily like this too much, but let's see how it turned out for you. Okay, I was wondering if you could have played here.
The f7 pawn's hanging.
I'm looking at something like this. And now I'm a bit worried about the knight as well as this pawn, but I may be in La La Land, I don't know. All I'm saying is that I can see now that rook takes, knight check, king takes f7 wins for black. So I have got a tactical threat, and this is hanging.
This is similar to, you actually ended up with this knight.
So yeah, look, I really like the concept that you're going forward. I like the idea that you trying to attack. I just want to gently point out to the fact that, like all the time, I'm a center maniac for a reason. I like to put my pieces in the center.
Yep.
This is actually a move I would have liked to see here. That's the other move I would have considered other than knight e5.
Okay.
And by the way, I didn't say that yet, but you should have done all these without taking this. For two reasons. A, because it is tension.
Yep.
And I know that you're already like going like, yes, just shut up about tension, but no, it's important. Because they will never take you here. Because they can't afford a queen in their face like that. So that's a trump card in your hand. That there is a tension that they can't take away, whereas you can always take that. So basically what it means is that on every single move, they have to reckon with you taking there, and they can never take you here. That's a super annoying thing.
Yep.
Okay, and once again, this is a swap, and we are not liking swaps in isolated pawn structures, so you will only swap it off if there is a benefit to it.
Okay.
Yeah, queen f4 is definitely a motive. Isn't there some sort of tactics here based on these dudes being weak?
There really is, and I missed it, unfortunately. And it's something that I should have been looking for. It was kind of the idea of playing the last couple of moves that I played.
Well, look, both knight g5 and rook e1 put enormous pressure on these two, which is stock standard in this structure, by the way.
Yeah.
And if you remember our last lesson, we did use tactical motifs a lot
Yes.
on these squares. So when you see queen f4, the first thing that springs to mind is that, oops, that's a fork.
Yeah.
So how can I exploit that? And you go like, okay, I can't, because if I do something like rook e6, my queen is simply hanging. And if I take knight takes, then this knight actually covers up that square, but then a new motif springs in, which is going to be the weakness of the 7th rank.
Yep. Yep.
And so it turns out that in this position, bishop takes e6 is playable, although I still have to add that g2 is annoyingly hanging. So it is a lot more complex variation than I take, they take, I check, I win. It's more like I take, they take, and holy cow, this is a mess.
Yep.
So this is where your calculation starts as opposed to where it ends. And this is really, really messy. I mean, it's obvious for a computer, but I mean, when you have to play moves like rook e5 that step into another fork, you just go like, oh god, what's happening here?
Yep.
But then again, by having the knight on g2, you are basically threatening to win 2 pieces when you go check and take, because that will make the knight hang here too. I don't blame you, Dominic, for missing this.
Okay.
If I were to choose to blame you for not finding this, the main motivation behind that would be that if you don't play this, everything else is hopeless.
Yeah.
So this is really a do or die moment.
Yep.
And therefore you look for extreme measures. Because if you accept the fact that you are going to drop one of these, then you are dead.
They're both crucial, aren't they?
Yes, exactly. And this is normally how you lose, by the way, an isolated pawn game with the isolated pawn, that you don't manage to generate enough counterplay, eventually stuff gets swapped off, and you just fall apart without seemingly committing any major mistakes.
Yep.
Like, it doesn't feel like we have made any major errors, and if you fail to find these very difficult tactics, you just lose without firing a shot. Which is, I assume, what happened here.
Yep.
Yeah, this is sad now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not gonna torture you with the rest. Look, all in all, it was quite a good effort, and you actually played a reasonably good middle game there after the h3 hiccup. So yeah, I didn't mind that game at all.
This is not the cheater. This guy used the computer. He's now banned.
Oh, okay. So did we lose this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he played perfectly.
Okay. I would like to say something else, Dominic. You played perfectly. I really liked the way how this opening went. If there was one thing I would have liked to point out, I don't know if theory would be on my side on this one or not. Can we play his c5? Probably not, because rook h4 and takes is threatening, so you had to play queen f6. Okay, queen d3. Maybe c5 now. What I'm trying to say is that I would love to have c5 in before I put the knight on c6. But the computer seems to agree with your choices, and basically the position that you got out of this is dead equal.
Yep.
And dead equal as black against a cheater, you are a legend. Okay, we stepped into knight e5 here in a very ugly manner. So, I don't know, maybe drop back and then play f6 to neutralize the weak e5 square.
Yep.
That seems to me to be a reasonable way to play. This was a little bit unsuspecting from you, that after bishop b5, that obviously floats the idea of taking at any stage followed by knight e5. You chose to ignore that.
Yeah, bad.
Okay, and then we fell apart.
Yeah.
Siciliano, how did this one go? Oh. Right, let me see. This is my glory moment, or my fail moment. Ooh, that's interesting. My chess base is not really popping up properly. Let me see. Uh-oh. You got busted, Dominic. I sent you a file on bishop g5.
This position.
Yep.
Ah,
Bishop g5 it is. Which is the only move in this position other than bishop c4 that successfully prevents e5. And remember how we looked at knight f5 takes and discussed that d5 here is impossible due to the bishop g5 move? And the file that I sent you is massively on e6, queen d2, bishop e7, castles, f4, knight takes, queen a5, king b1, h6 and h4. And I'm sure that this will be the point when you go like, oh yeah, we have seen this.
yeah, I definitely took it back and reviewed that file.
Because this is a motive that is definitely would stick to most people's minds. Oh wow, it's cool that take and the queen comes back and we mate.
Yep.
And I just brought up the file, your opening file, and I can see here.
What number is it?
You can see 217. But then again, remember that was the time when we had the hiccup with your chess base.
Yep.
So this potentially could be one that you do not have, which means that I would like to ask you right now to check.
Check.
Because I don't want to give you grief for something that you don't deserve. Oh. Okay.
No, I have it.
You have it. My recording got messed up a little bit, so let me just fix it up. Wish I knew what to do.
Yeah, I've been trying to keep up with the new opening lines, and I'm forgetting stuff now from previous. So.
Yeah, look, I don't blame you for that. I totally understand that problem. We all have that. Let me just try to fix this thing, because now this chess base window is in my face and I don't like that. Okay, all good. So yeah, the h6, h4 line is the one that we are discussing. So go through it because it is important that you have it. So basically, Dominic, when they play knight c6, to break it down very simple for you, it's not gonna be an f3 variation, regardless of what's happening from here on.
Okay.
It can't possibly go. Okay, there is only one way how it could go into that, if they played here d6. That's the only way how you can turn it back into an English attack, and even then, I would not play here f3, but bishop e3 first, and then f3 g4.
Okay.
So your two main ways to have the English attack is via the Najdorf, when they play a6 here instead of knight c6.
Yep.
And then you play bishop e3, f3, or the Scheveningen, when they play e6 first, and then again you play bishop e3, f3. These are your two ways to get the English attack. Everything else is going to go into something else.
I need to remember, because I'm always not sure.
Yeah, okay, and now this is just a big mess of... Yeah, you basically mixed up a lot of variations here in a very bad way. So you should have dropped here back and still hope to transpose into some kind of English attack. If they know what to do, that wouldn't happen, because after bishop e6, bishop e3, something like bishop e7, queen d2, they will have d5 breakout before you can castle here, and this endgame is not better for white at all. But that would still be far better than playing here knight b5, where you just simply get kicked out, and you really need to have a bishop here instead of having f3 in.
Yes.
So we really mixed up variations here in a bad way.
Yeah.
And consequently now our position is terrible. Yeah, and he's playing good chess too, so credit to the dude. The computer is disliking you for this. I don't mind the strategy behind it. You have got two bishops, you want to open stuff up. Okay, this is a move that I don't get.
I wanted to put my bishop on... I thought it would be...
Oh, you wanted to go to c3?
Yeah, c3. Yeah.
But isn't it very easily dodgeable by f6?
I was actually not
Looking at sacking.
Yeah, and not
Yeah.
minding if you weaken the pawn in front of his king.
See, my point, what I'm trying to say is that the way how you would exploit that weakness is if then you could attack h7, because that would force further weakening moves. But I'm failing to picture that, so let's just play along, okay? So I play rook d8, bishop c3, f6.
Yep.
Now if you play bishop takes, pawn takes, queen takes, I really have serious doubts about where your counterplay lies here.
Yeah, it's not happening, is it?
Not really, no.
No.
So, whilst I like the ambition of softening up your opponent's king side, this was probably not a very efficient way to go about it. But if you ask me what would I have done instead, there would be a big silence on my end of the microphone. I don't know.
Yeah.
So, and remember that doing something is always better than not having a plan. So, in the end of the day, at least, you know, you did something consistent. And when he played f6, at least you must have felt like, oh, okay, that's what I wanted to force. Yes, so thank you for playing that. Yeah. So what you need to do very badly now is to redirect your queen to the king side.
Yeah.
Because you can't possibly attack without a queen.
Yeah. Yep.
How the heck we can do that? Beyond me, because we would have to do something like this, which looks ridiculously time wasting.
Yeah.
But we can't possibly swing across like this and that because all these squares are covered by black here.
Yeah.
Including. So,
actually,
yeah.
I felt like at this point of the game, actually, it was probably about even. Was my assessment. The computer says obviously -1, but I thought I was doing okay.
But well, yes, if you had an extra pawn, say here. Then it would be really, really cool. Without it, I have got my serious doubts. And as soon as the knight pops up on e5, you will have doubts too.
Yeah.
And it didn't take long for that to happen.
Yeah.
That is a neat trick.
Yeah.
I have to say.
Yep.
Yeah, so the problem with the Sicilian Domenic is that you need to know your first 10 moves like there was no tomorrow, because otherwise you end up almost inevitably in not an equal, but an outright worse position.
Yep.
It was very weird. I suggest you start it off with this. Because often you find that this bishop, in c4 systems especially, don't go to d6.
Okay.
Okay, so you were consistent with what I showed you. Knight here, bishop here, knight here. Sorry, this knight there. And that one goes for the pin.
You actually suggested knight to f6, if I remember correctly.
The knight, no, I didn't. The knight f6 one was against c4s. Remember that our stock standard idea is that we go here, here, and then the knight comes here, and we put pawn on f6 to prevent the knight coming in here and here. I'm pretty sure that last lesson we went through this again because you then played bishop f5, and then I told you that that is not necessarily a bad idea because it swaps off the correct bishops, except for the fact that this check is going to annoy the heck out of us, and hence the bishop needs to go here. I'm pretty sure that we talked about this last week.
We did. I remember that you said we agreed that I'd play bishop g4, which I also remembered. But maybe the week before, I thought you said knight f6.
All right, I would like to then clarify it now for you, and then we are in the clear. So you play knight c6, and if they play anything stock standard, this is your setup, and I'm just playing now blindly for white. Okay, these are where your pieces are going. And the idea behind not having the knight on f6 but the pawn is to neutralize this knight, as well as supporting your ambitions of a kingside attack with castling here. This is what you do against everything except against early c4s. Because now you have been contested in the center, you need to fight for it.
Okay.
It's very logical if you think about it, because we simply can't play after c4 for this structure anymore because you just lose a pawn.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the logic behind it. Okay, so you started off with bishop d6, which is fine, and now knight f6 is correct too. but only because they committed to c4.
Yep.
I would castle here just because I'm paranoid about checks and tactics and whatnot. And on an odd occasion you tend to put this knight here and here to support d5 and play c6 to support d5 again. And also I'm a bit wary of knight g5s when I have a bishop here that is guarding that. But it's still perfectly okay. I would definitely not castle here now. For the following reasons. There is already an open c file here.
Yep.
This pin can build up ridiculously fast on your c6 knight.
Yep.
They have got a very quick and easy access to this file, to this square,
yep,
which is right in front of your king, and your attack now is very likely to be too slow. So knight g5, castles, knight e6, queen e6. Oh yeah, and that's the last reason. If you can't meet knight g5 with a bishop move, and this has to go, you will fall apart on the white squares really badly. So in fact, in this position, we already needed to attend to this one way or another. And as much as I passionately hate to do this, I think you needed to play something like that.
Okay.
Because if knight g5 hits you,
yep,
that's major trouble. Or even drop back. As much again as I hate to do moves like this, I passionately hate them.
Yep, yep.
Mind you, structurally, this is far more sound than this, with the bishop on d6. And the reason why that's so is because one of our main principles is that the isolated pawn needs to be blockaded.
Yeah.
And the blockade, whilst it's supported by the bishop, is not strong enough because the queen is not guarding the knight. So I can start to play against the knight here by queen here, bishop there, queen here, or kicking the defending bishop out by knight g5. So if you have this bishop back here, that adds an extra guard to the most important square and piece, and also denies knight g5.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so what was the plan in case of bishop c4? I'm afraid that my next student is here, Domenic, so I will have to cut it a bit shorter. But I will definitely finish this game.
Yep.
So yeah, after bishop c4, I'm a bit full of worries here. And that's basically the price you pay for not having the bishop there. Yep. I find it hard to believe that this needed to be guarded. I'm pretty sure I would have played here rook b1 and tried to crash you here as soon as possible, but I'm not going to get into his mistakes now.
In a couple of moves' time, he had a good move to sacrifice his queen for my knight as well. That I don't think he played. Yeah.
Oh wow, queen takes and bishop f3 and we're gone.
Yeah, I saw this and I was thinking, oh, it's game over. It was already game over, but
yeah, well, it is game over, but yeah, it still would have been pretty. Queen a5, wow. It does it when it's nowhere near as good, but still good. I actually really like this move, Domenic. Good on you for doing this. If he had taken that, I think he would have had very good chances of survival. Sadly, he didn't.
Yeah.
It's good play by both of you. Sadly, it's a bit too late. Yeah. Okay. All right. Not a drama. I'm not really concerned about these losses because many of them were related to opening inaccuracies that we can fix up, and at points like here when you played rook d5, you showed some really good resistance. So that's good. I would like to ask you to have a look at those Sicilian files because they seem to be a recurring issue, and you seem to be covered by those files. Okay, so was it mate in 3 or 4 that we were talking?
Can you say again? You broke up a little bit.
Was that the mate in threes or the fours that I asked you to do?
Was. And you actually reviewed the sheets that I sent
Yeah, I
you?
did. So I'm bringing it up to see the one that you told me that they didn't. Oh, and please send me the next lot so that I
Okay.
can mark those two. So did you say that number 4 didn't work?
Number 4 is killing me.
This one?
I think I just got the answer prior to our lesson, but I haven't checked the answer yet, and I'm not sure.
All right. Can you tell me please what you have written down and what I said to do about it? Because I'm pretty sure that your first suggestion was Queen G7, which is the correct move.
No, I wasn't looking at Queen G7. I was looking at. Actually, I did look at Queen G7, but I looked at Queen G7, King takes G7,
Yep.
Knight F5 check. But then I saw that he could go either to King G6 or King G8 or King F8, and it looked like too many options.
Correct. So then you ditch Knight F5.
Yeah. Okay. But all right.
First and foremost, Knight F5 should not have been your first choice, Dominic, there, out of principle.
Okay.
Because you have got two double checks with the Knight F5 and Knight E6, and Knight E6 is a capture as well as a check, therefore you start with that.
That's too many hints. Okay. All right.
That's too many what?
You just gave me the answer, I think.
I did, but that was my intention, plus it's only half of the answer.
Okay. I thought that I actually had a correct answer, a correct solution with Knight takes E6 as the first move.
What's your response to...
This is really hard because there's so many good moves at the start.
Yes, that is correct.
This problem here, I think I spent over an hour on. It's been killing me.
I'm sorry to hear that because it's not worth an hour. So don't do that. I highly recommend you, if you get stuck on something for more than 10 minutes, just move on.
Oh, really?
Because, yeah, it's not worth the time. The idea is not to sit you there, make you sit there and do or die. The idea is to engage in a meaningful way in calculating exercises. If you can't crack these in 10 minutes, move on.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially because some, like this, seem to have... In 96, I'm sitting here thinking about how to refute it, and I'm struggling.
I think that maybe a move like Bishop G5 is a refutation.
Well, I'm looking at Bishop H6, actually.
I looked at that as well, actually.
But they didn't seem to refute it because Knight E7 and then G7 is made. Bishop G5. But see, the problem is that these moves don't refute it per se. They just prolong the inevitable, probably beyond the 4-move limit.
Yes.
And that's the other reason why I'm saying that move on, because it turns out Knight E6 is a winning move. I would give you a bit of a grief for not finding the 4s made, but I'm not gonna blame you for winning a game.
Okay.
That's what we are sitting down to play chess for. We want to win. Did you win? Yes. Good on you, mate. Yes, you could have finished it faster. Next time, please do so. But, you know, not much else I can say.
Yeah.
Was there any other that you struggled with?
Well, I ended up solving the third problem, but it took me 35 minutes.
This one?
Yeah, I was fixed on Knight takes H7.
Yes, I know. When I tried to solve this one first, I was fixed on that too. But the problem is that it gives them an escape square, King G8, King H7. So did you actually figure out the solution?
I think that I got it. It was Knight E6.
That's correct. So Knight E6 check basically is the idea is to get rid of with this knight without allowing them any escape squares. And then Queen E7, Queen E8, Knight E7 mate is going to come inevitably.
I was very happy when I got that.
Good. I'm very happy for you too.
Yeah.
It's great. So have you finished the whole page, including the ones that I asked you to fix up?
No, I haven't. I need to keep going. I spent like I guess another 20 minutes on the first problem, which I eventually solved. And
oh, you actually did not crack this one. Yeah, I remember that. So can you please tell me a solution now?
Yeah, so my solution is, and I haven't checked it, but I think it's correct. So Knight F6 check.
Yep.
G takes F.
Yeah.
Queen to F8 check.
Yep.
King takes F8. Bishop H6 check.
Very good.
King G8 and Rook E8.
Yeah. By the way, because of these are made in 4s, you can be 99% certain whether your solution is correct or not.
But I thought, like, before I submitted them to you, I hadn't checked my answers, and I thought I had them all right. But when you came back to me, oh, you got this one wrong, this one wrong, this one, I thought, oh, I've missed so many defenses for black.
Yeah, well, but see, in this line, none of the white moves can be met by any other black move than what you proposed. So knight f6 I had to take, queen f8 I must take, bishop h6, only legal move king g8, rook e8 mate. So you can't possibly get this wrong in a sense that once you have this line, it must be good because black played only moves all the way. Yes. Whereas here, knight e6 can be met by knight takes or bishop takes, so you have to cover more lines.
Yeah.
Okay, so please do two things. One, send me again your solutions. If you don't mind scanning them in, I think that's the fastest and easiest. And then please do the next lot.
Yep, we'll do.
Okay. All right, Dominic, I'm sorry, but I need to move on because my next lesson is lined up. I hope that I was helpful enough. And yeah, please review those Sicilian lines at least to, you know, to such standard that when a Sicilian pops up, like e4, c5, knight f3, you know what way the game will go depending on they play knight c6 or d6 or e6, and you feel confident enough to enter all of those.
Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. I hope to see you next week then.
Yep. Yeah. And
come on in.
Yep. Thanks. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. Okay. See you, mate. Bye. Hey, sorry. Did I make you wait?
No. I was running late. This is too early in the morning.
It's afternoon.
Yeah, it's morning for me.
Sorry, excuse the mess. I haven't been at home for
You're just sitting in the dark.
Day and a half, and I hate this room. It's always messy, and it's always my fault.
Just like my study.
I can't blame anybody for this. That's easy playing chess on that end of the business. Oh, sorry.